The General Dynamics F-111 Aardvark was a supersonic, medium-range interdictor and tactical attack aircraft that also filled the roles of strategic nuclear bomber, aerial reconnaissance, and electronic warfare aircraft in its various versions. Developed in the 1960s by General Dynamics, it first entered service in 1967 with the United States Air Force. The Royal Australian Air Force also ordered the type and began operating F-111Cs in 1973. The F-111 pioneered several technologies for production aircraft, including variable sweep wings, afterburning turbofan engines, and automated terrain following radar for low-level, high-speed flight. Its design influenced later variable sweep wing aircraft, and some of its advanced features have since become commonplace. The F-111 suffered a variety of problems during initial development. Several of its intended roles, such as an aircraft carrier-based naval interceptor with the F-111B, failed to materialize. USAF F-111 variants were retired in the 1990s, with the F-111Fs in 1996 and F-111s in 1998. The F-111 was replaced in USAF service by the F-15E Strike Eagle for medium-range precision strike missions, while the supersonic bomber role has been assumed by the B-1B Lancer. The RAF was the last operator of the F-111, with its aircraft serving until December 2010. Development. Early requirements. The U-2 incident of May 1960, in which an American CIA U-2 spy plane was shot down over the USSR, stunned the United States government. Besides greatly damaging U.S.-Soviet relations, the incident showed that the Soviet Union had developed a surface-to-air missile that could reach aircraft above 60,000 feet. The United States Air Force Strategic Air Command and the RAF Bomber Command's plans to send subsonic, high-altitude B-47 and V-bomber formations into the USSR were now much less viable. By 1960, SAC had begun moving to low-level penetration, which greatly reduced radar detection distances. At the time, SAMs were ineffective against low-flying aircraft, and interceptor aircraft had less of a speed advantage at low altitudes. The Air Force's Tactical Air Command was largely concerned with the fighter-bomber and deep-strike interdiction roles. TAC was in the process of receiving its latest design, the Republic F-105 Thunder Chief, which was designed to deliver nuclear weapons fast and far, but required long runways. A simpler variable geometry wing configuration with the pivot points further out from the aircraft's centerline was reported by NASA in 1958, which made swing wings viable. This led Air Force leaders to encourage its use. In June 1960, the USAF issued specifications SAW-183 for a long-range interdiction strike aircraft able to penetrate Soviet air defenses at very low altitudes and high speeds. The specification also called for the aircraft to operate from short, unprepared airstrips. In the 1950s, the United States Navy sought a long-range, high-endurance interceptor aircraft to protect its carrier battle groups against long-range anti-ship missiles launched from Soviet jet bombers and submarines. The Navy needed a fleet air defense fighter with a more powerful radar and longer-range missiles than the F-4 Phantom II to intercept both enemy bombers and missiles. Seeking a FAD fighter, the Navy started with the subsonic, straight-winged aircraft, the Douglas F-60 Missileer in the late 1950s. The Missileer was designed to carry 6 long-range missiles and loiter for 5 hours but would be defenseless after firing its missiles. The program was formally cancelled in 1961. The Navy had tried variable geometry wings with the F-110F Jaguar, but abandoned it in the early 1950s. It was NASA's simplification which made the variable geometry wings practical. By 1960, increases in aircraft weights required improved high-lift devices, such as variable geometry wings. Variable geometry offered high speeds and maneuverability with heavier payloads, long range, and the ability to take off and land in shorter distances. Tactical fighter experimental. The U.S. Air Force and Navy were both seeking new aircraft when Robert McNamara was appointed U.S. Secretary of Defense in January 1961. The aircraft sought by the two armed services shared the need to carry heavy armament and fuel loads, feature high supersonic speed, twin engines and two seats, and probably use variable geometry wings. On 14 February 1961, McNamara formally directed the services to study the development of a single aircraft that would satisfy both requirements. Early studies indicated that the best option was to base the design on the Air Force requirement, and use a modified version for the Navy. In June 1961, Secretary McNamara ordered the go-ahead of tactical fighter experimental despite Air Force and Navy efforts to keep the programs separate. The Air Force and the Navy could agree only on swing-wing, two-seat, twin-engine design features. The Air Force wanted a tandem-seat aircraft for low-level penetration ground attack, while the Navy wanted a shorter, high-altitude interceptor with side-by-side seating to allow the pilot and radar operator to share the radar display. Also, the Air Force wanted the aircraft designed for 7.33 grams with Mach 2.5 speed at altitude and Mach 1.2 speed at low level with an approximate length of 70 feet. The Navy had less strenuous requirements of 6 grams with Mach 2 speed at altitude and high subsonic speed at low level with a length of 56 feet. The Navy also wanted the aircraft with a nose large enough for a 48 in diameter radar dish. McNamara developed a basic set of requirements for TFX based largely on the Air Force's requirements, and, on 1 September 1961, ordered the Air Force to develop it. A request for proposals for the TFX was provided to industry in October 1961. In December, proposals were received from Boeing, General Dynamics, Lockheed, McDonnell, North American and Republic. The evaluation group found all the proposals lacking, but Boeing and General Dynamics were selected to submit enhanced designs. Boeing's proposal was recommended by the selection board in January 1962, with the exception of the engine, which was not considered acceptable. Switching to a crew escape capsule instead of ejection seats and alterations to radar and missile storage were also needed. Both companies provided updated proposals in April 1962. Air Force reviewers favored Boeing's offering, while the Navy found both submissions unacceptable for its operations. 2 more rounds of updates to the proposals were conducted, with Boeing being picked by the selection board. In November 1962, McNamara selected General Dynamics' proposal due to its greater commonality between Air Force and Navy versions. The Boeing aircraft shared less than half of the major structural components. General Dynamics signed the TFX contract in December 1962. A congressional investigation followed, but could not change the selection. Design phase. The F-111A and B variants used the same airframe structural components and Pratt & Whitney TF-30P1 turbofan engines. They featured side-by-side crew seating in an escape capsule as required by the Navy. The F-111B's nose was 8.5 feet shorter so as to fit on existing carrier elevator decks, and had 3.5 feet longer wingtips to improve on-station endurance time. The Navy version would carry an AN-9 Aruban Florence Pulse Doppler radar and AIM-54 Phoenix missiles. The Air Force version would carry the AN-APQ-113 attack radar and the AN-APQ-110 terrain-following radar and air-to-ground armament. A team of engineers at General Dynamics was led by Robert H. Widmer. Lacking experience with carrier-based fighters, General Dynamics teamed with Grumman for the assembly and testing of the F-111B aircraft. In addition, Grumman would also build the F-111A's aft fuselage and the landing gear. The General Dynamics and Grumman team faced ambitious requirements for range, weapons load, and aircraft weight. The F-111 design also included new features on a production military aircraft, such as variable geometry wings and afterburning turbofan engines. The F-111A mock-up was inspected in September 1963. The first test F-111A was rolled out of Plant 4 of General Dynamics' Fort Worth, Texas facility on 15 October 1964. It was powered by YTF-3OP1 turbofans and used a set of ejector seats as the escape capsule was not yet available. The F-111A first flew on 21 December 1964 from Caswell Air Force Base, Texas, U.S. The first F-111B was also equipped with ejector seats and first flew on 18 May 1965. Initially there were compressor surge and stall issues in certain parts of the flight regime. NASA, the Air Force, and General Dynamics studies resulted in the engine inlet design being modified in 1965-66, ending with the triple plow I and triple plow 2 designs. The F-111A achieved a speed of Mach 1.3 in February 1965 with an interim intake design. Cracks in the F-111's wing attach points were first discovered in 1968 during ground fatigue testing. An F-111 crashed the following year due to this issue. The attached structure required redesign and testing to ensure adequate design and workmanship. Flight testing of the F-111A ran through 1973. The F-111B was cancelled by the Navy in 1968 due to weight and performance issues, along with the need for additional fighter requirements. The F-111C model was developed for Australia. Subsequently, the improved F-111E, F-111D, F-111F models were developed for the U.S. Air Force. The strategic bomber FB-111A and the F-111 electronic warfare versions were later developed for the USAF. Production ended in 1976 after 563 F-111 aircraft were built. Design overview. The F-111 was an all-weather attack aircraft, capable of low-level penetration of enemy defenses to deliver ordnance on the target. The F-111 featured variable geometry wings, an internal weapons bay and a cockpit with side-by-side seating. The cockpit was part of an escape crew capsule. The wing sweep varied between 16 degrees and 72.5 degrees. The wing included leading-edge slats and double-slotted flaps over its full length. The airframe was made up mostly of aluminium alloys with steel, titanium and other materials used in places. The fuselage was made of a semi-monocoque structure with stiffened panels and honeycomb structure panels for skin. The F-111 F-111 used a three-point landing gear arrangement, with a two-wheel nose gear and two single-wheel main landing gear units. The landing gear door for the main gear, which was positioned in the center of the fuselage, also served as a speed brake in flight. Most F-111 variants included a terrain-following radar system connected to the autopilot. The aircraft was powered by two Pratt & Whitney TF-30 afterburning turbofan engines. The F-111's variable geometry wings, escape capsule, terrain-following radar, and afterburning turbofans were new technologies for production aircraft. Armament weapons bay. The F-111 featured an internal weapons bay that could carry bombs, a removable 20mm M61 cannon, or auxiliary fuel tanks. For bombs, the bay could hold two 750-pound M117 conventional bombs, one nuclear bomb or practice bombs. The F-111B for the U.S. Navy was to carry two AIM-54 Phoenix long-range air-to-air missiles in the bay. The cannon had a large 2,084-round ammunition tank, and its muzzle was covered by a fairing. However, it was rarely fitted on F-111s. The F-111C and F-111F were equipped to carry the AVQ-26 paved tack targeting system on a rotating carriage that kept the pod protected within the weapons bay when not in use. Paved tack featured a forward-looking infrared sensor, optical camera and laser rangefinder designator. The paved tack pod allowed the F-111 to designate targets and drop laser-guided bombs on them. Australian F-111Cs carried a pallet of sensors and cameras for aerial reconnaissance use. The FB-111 could carry two AGM-69 SRAM air-to-surface nuclear missiles in its weapons bay. General Dynamics trialed an arrangement with two AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles carried on rails in a trapeze arrangement from the bay, but this was not adopted. Early F-111 models had radars equipped to guide the AIM-7 Sparrow medium-range air-to-air missile, but it was never fitted. External ordnance. Each wing was equipped with four underwing pylons. The inner two pylons on each wing rotated to align with the fuselage, while the outer two were fixed. Each pylon had a capacity of 5,000 pounds. Various bombs and missiles could be carried on the pylons. Auxiliary fuel drop tanks with 600 US gallons capacity each could be fitted. The design of the F-111's fuselage prevented the carriage of external weapons under the fuselage, but two stations were available on the underside for electronic countermeasures pods and/or data link pods. One station was on the weapons bay, and the other on the rear fuselage between the engines. The F-111's maximum practical weapons load was limited, since the fixed pylons could not be used with the wings fully swept. Tactical F-111s were fitted with shoulder rails on the four inner swiveling pylons to mount AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles for self-defense. Australian F-111Cs were equipped to launch the Harpoon anti-ship missile and the Popeye standoff missile. FB-111s could carry the same conventional ordnance as the tactical variants, but the wing pylons were more commonly used for either fuel tanks or strategic nuclear gravity bombs. They could carry up to four AGM-69 SRAM nuclear missiles on the pylons. Historical significance. The F-111 was the first production variable geometry wing aircraft. Several other types have followed with similar swing wing configuration, including the Soviet Sukhoi Su-17 fitter, Mikhail Yangurovich MiG-23 flogger, Tupolev Tu-22M backfire, Sukhoi Su-24 fencer, and Tupolev Tu-160 blackjack, the U.S. B-1 Lancer bomber, and a European Panavia Tornado. The Sukhoi Su-24 was very similar to the F-111. The U.S. Navy's role intended for the F-111B was instead filled by another variable geometry design, the F-14 Tomcat. Operational history. U.S. Air Force. The first of 6 initial production F-111s was delivered on 17 July 1967 to fighter squadrons at Nellis Air Force Base. These aircraft were used for crew training. 428th Tactical Fighter Squadron achieved initial operational capability on 28 April 1968. After early testing, a detachment of 6 aircraft were sent in March 1968 to Southeast Asia for combat Lancer testing in real combat conditions in Vietnam. In little over a month, 3 aircraft were lost and the combat tests were halted. It turned out that all 3 had been lost through a malfunction in the horizontal stabilizer, not by enemy action. This caused a storm of criticism in the U.S. It was not until 1971 that 474 TFW was fully operational. September 1972 saw the F-111 back in Southeast Asia, stationed at Takli Air Base, Thailand. F-111s from Nellis AFB participated in the final month of Operation Linebacker and later the Operation Linebacker 2 aerial offensive against the North Vietnamese. They also supported regional aerial operations against other communist forces such as Operation Pho Phaang 3 during the Laotian Civil War in Laos. F-111 missions did not require tankers or ECM support, and they could operate in weather that grounded most other aircraft. One F-111 could carry the bomb load of 4 McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIs. The worth of the new aircraft was beginning to show. F-111s flew more than 4,000 combat missions in Vietnam with only 6 combat losses. From the 30th of July 1973, F-111s of the 347th Tactical Fighter Wing were stationed at Takli Air Base. The 347th TFW conducted bombing missions in Cambodia in support of Khmer Republic forces until the 15th of August 1973 when U.S. combat support ceased in accordance with the Case Church Amendment. The 347th TFW was stationed at Karat Royal Thai Air Force Base from the 12th of July 1974 until the 30th of June 1975. In May 1975, 347th TFW F-111s provided air support during the Mayaguez incident. On the 14th of April 1986, 18 F-111s and approximately 25 Navy aircraft conducted airstrikes against Libya under Operation El Dorado Canyon. The 18 F-111s of the 48th Tactical Fighter Wing and the 20th Tactical Fighter Wing flew what turned out to be the longest fighter combat mission in history. The round-trip flight between Raf Lake and Heath, Raf Upper Hayford, United Kingdom and Libya of 6,400 miles spanned 13 hours. One F-111 was lost over Libya, probably shot down. F-111s participated in the Gulf War in 1991. During Desert Storm, F-111Fs completed 3.2 successful strike missions for every unsuccessful one, better than any other U.S. strike aircraft used in the operation. The group of 66 F-111Fs dropped almost 80% of the war's laser-guided bombs, including the GBU-15 and the penetrating, bunker-buster GBU-28. 18 F-111s were also deployed during the operation. The F-111s were credited with destroying more than 1,500 Iraqi tanks and armored vehicles. The use in the anti-armor role was dubbed tank plinking. The F-111 was in service with the USAF from 1967 through 1998. The Strategic Air Command had FB-111s in service from 1969 through 1992. At a ceremony marking the F-111's USAF retirement, on the 27th of July 1996, it was officially named Aardvark, its long-standing unofficial name. The USAF retired the F-111 electronic warfare variant in 1998. Royal Australian Air Force. The Australian government ordered 24 F-111C aircraft to replace the RAAF's English Electric Canberras in the bombing and tactical strike role. While the first aircraft was officially handed over in September 1968, structural issues delayed the entry into service. The first F-111C was accepted at Nellis Air Force Base on 15 March 1973. The RAAF's first 6 F-111Cs arrived at Ambley on 1 July 1973, and 3 subsequent flights of 6 F-111s arrived on 27 July, 28 September and 4 December. F-111Cs were allocated to No. 1 Squadron and No. 6 Squadron, under the control of No. 82 Wing. In Australia, the F-111 was affectionately known as the Pig due to its long snout and terrain-following ability. The purchase proved to be highly successful for the RA. Although it never saw combat, the F-111C was the fastest, longest-range combat aircraft in Southeast Asia. Aviation historian Alan Stevens has written that they were the preeminent weapons system in the Asia-Pacific region throughout the service and provided Australia with a genuine, independent strike capability. Former Indonesian Defence Minister Benny Murdani told his Australian counterpart Kim Beazley that when others became upset with Australia during Indonesian cabinet meetings, Murdani told them, "Do you realise the Australians have a bomber that can put a bomb through that window into the table here in front of us?" The drawdown of the RAAF's F-111 fleet began with the retirement of the F-111G models operated by No. 6 Squadron in late 2007. There was controversial procurement of 24 F/A-18F Super Hornets as an interim replacement for the F-111s while the F-35 program suffered delays. One of the reasons given for the F-111's retirement was the high maintenance time required for every flight hour. The last F-111s were retired on 3 December 2010.